Bye, Jensen. Where are you going? Where are you going?
To Rock Bend Camp. Bye.
Don't forget your lunch. Okay, this little tripod thing is not working at all. Like, whoop. Okay, never mind. Let me just hold on to this. Okay, so we just got home. This was my last morning of, I get like a week off between regular school and summer school starting. So this is my last day before summer school starts tomorrow. So I've been doing a bunch of stuff to prep, went to breakfast with a friend, got Jensen from Rockstar Camp, and now I'm gonna make him some lunch, make myself some lunch. Why am I down here if I don't need to be? What am I doing? Oh my gosh, okay. Jensen, your friend is calling.
Okay.
So they can play Roblox. Yeah, okay, and then I wanna talk about books so far this year. Let's talk about the best books of the year so far. It's June, we are halfway through, but while I am getting lunch for us, let me throw it over to today's sponsor. We love a sponsored video. Welcome to our office where we are doing a little bit of renovation, and by renovation I mean my husband is getting rid of all of his books and I'm keeping all of my books so we can make room for more kid stuff, but I need all my books. So anyway, it's a little bit wild in here today. We have more work to do on this. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, the Gilder Lehrman Institute. If you are a US history teacher and you haven't stumbled upon any of their stuff, I would be surprised. They have a ton of really great resources for US history teachers. I used it when I taught US history, and then also while I was writing my books about US history, I was able to find like primary source documents there, as well as just general information. So they have awesome stuff for teachers. And they also have this program. I'm actually very jealous of anybody who needs to get their master's in US history, because this program is so cool. I already have my master's in US history and I loved the process. I'm really glad that I did it, but there were some very annoying things about it, and all of the annoying things are actually eliminated through this program. So this master's degree in US history is a partnership with Gettysburg College, and it's fully online and fully accredited, and it's 10 3-credit courses. So you can do the full master's degree, or if you need to get like continuing education units, you need to take a couple more classes, you could also do that because these are graduate level courses. So this is like my dream program. So all of the courses are taught by like top American historians. All of the lectures are asynchronous, so you don't have to drive to campus like I did. You don't have to look for parking. You don't have to go up 7 flights of stairs and then find your classroom and sit for the lecture at a specific time. You just do the lectures, after work, after your kids have gone to bed if you have kids, and you get that done when you can. There are Q&A sessions that you go to with the professors, which is amazing because you get to actually interact with these like top level amazing professors. And then you have like short reading response papers that you write and like longer research papers that you write, which is pretty standard for graduate coursework in history. And like the course titles are just really, really cool. It was so fun to learn about the American West and like all of the mythology surrounding that and how it still impacts us so much today. So that would be a really cool class. There's a history of American protest class, which would also be so interesting. Reconstruction classes, Civil War history, everything that you need to have a well-rounded knowledge of US history, and then you can just like immediately implement it into your class. So imagine you are a teacher teaching US history and learning all of this stuff in your graduate level coursework, and then you can just implement it immediately into your teaching. So when I was getting my master's degree, I was teaching US history, so I would teach, you know, all day from like 7:45 to 3. And then this was at the beginning of my teaching career, so there were some days where I would teach all of that, and then from like 3:30 to 5:30, I had to go to this thing called BITSA, like induction or whatever, these really annoying meetings that you have to go to clear your teaching credential. And then I would have to drive an hour from there to Fullerton, where I went to graduate school, and I would have like 30 minutes to like grab some food, find parking on this massive campus, and then go to class from 7 to 9:45 or 10 o'clock-ish. And so while I like loved the content and like, you know, loved meeting other historians and stuff, that was so difficult. Then I'd have to drive an hour home. I wouldn't get home and like settled and unpacked and everything until like midnight, and then, you know, go to bed a little bit after that, and then wake up in the morning and go back to work and teach again. So with this program, you're not having to drive to campus. You're not having to find parking. You're just doing the lectures when you can and getting your coursework done when you can. The other really cool thing about this program is that you just pay for each class, and in total, the whole master's degree is $7,500. That is a lot less than I paid for mine. Because for mine, I remember there was like one semester where there was only one class that I could take, like that, you know, was actually offered in the evenings when I could drive there after work. Some of them were like during the daytime. I couldn't do that because I had a full-time job, and then I would have to go take classes at night. So I had to pay for like a half-time tuition for only one class. And I think I had to do that like twice while I was writing my thesis. I think I had to like pay for a half-time or like part-time tuition just to be continuing to write my thesis. And so that really like wasted a lot of money having to do it that way, because my program just wasn't set up for people who were already working full-time and who were teachers. So those were the things that made it, you know, kind of inconvenient and expensive. And I don't have to be too jealous, because I did find on their website that you can take, I think, up to 4 classes, like non-matriculated, like where they aren't necessarily going towards a degree. I could kind of like audit those classes, you know? And I think I might do that, because this is just such like high level, amazing information. And it's very cool because this is really like geared towards teachers. So the other people in your courses, like the other people that are in those like live Q&A chats, are other teachers, and you can kind of like share ideas with them. You're like, you know, probably posting on some discussion boards with them and stuff. And it's people from all over. This is an online program, so you can talk to people from different states and people who do things maybe differently from you, and meet some new colleagues, and it would just be so fun. So if for some weird reason there was a benefit to me to get 2 master's degrees in US history, I would totally do this. I'm gonna leave all of the information below. And then even if you have your master's already, just go check out the Gilder Lehrman website, because they have tons of other resources for teachers as well. Thank you again to the Gilder Lehrman Institute for sponsoring this portion of the video. And I kind of wish I could go back in time and get my master's from them. Take a look at that if you are interested in getting your master's degree in US history like me. It's a very, very fun thing to get your master's in. Okay, it's finally summer. We're trying to get organized. I really, really need to organize my books. So let me show you some of my book stacks that I have all over the house. This is embarrassing. So here are my bookshelves. These are books that I've read. These are my Virgin Islands books. These, I was just trying to make a rainbow. These are just fiction, I think, like paperbacks. Most of these are history books down here. I think this is mostly US history. We've got more world history down here. I don't even know what's down here. Stuff that I still need to go through. I want to make a video based on these 3 books, so I was just keeping those together. These are more like history paperbacks. Some of these I've read. These two I still want to read. This is more fiction. Mostly history right here, I think. And then like hardcover fiction up here with some candles. Some of the books I wrote. It's my Ruta Sepetys stuff. These are all books I haven't read. And these are mostly like teaching books, like education books. I'm using my vlogging camera today, which I don't often do anymore. And it keeps like turning off. I don't know what is wrong with this thing, but we're gonna use it for today. Ugh. And we're gonna go into my Goodreads account. For like several years, I just never used Goodreads. I just like wrote down all the books that I read, and like you guys would always comment on videos like, what's your Goodreads? Why don't you just use Goodreads? And I don't know why either. It's so much easier and better. Like now I love like updating my reading challenge and like updating like my percentages and pages and everything. It's great. I don't know what I was thinking. You guys were right all along. Okay, so we are halfway through the year. It's June right now. And I set a goal for 40 books. I think I did 40 last year, and I'm at 31. So I'm 14 books ahead of schedule. So maybe we could do 50. I feel like this is too high up. What if I bring it down? No, that's not good. Okay, let's just go right here. This feels more better angle. Okay, so of the 31 that I have read this year, let's see which ones are my favorite. Okay, I started off with Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. Ugh, I don't know what sickness, I don't know if it was COVID or the flu or what, but like June 1st of this year, or January 1st, I mean, I was so sick. I could not move. So I laid there in bed and listened to this audiobook, and it was really, really good. It's like true crime, kind of. It's like based on a true story, but it kind of takes like a different perspective on it. And the audiobook was really good. I feel like that's just like a good way to experience the book. That was one of my favorites. Oh, The Mercies was also very good, just because it's so different. Like it was set in a very different place and time than I usually read, and that's, you know, my goal for the year. I'm trying to like read around the world and read on different continents. This one, 1600s in a Norwegian coastal village. So it's Finnmark, Norway. I kept getting confused if it was Finland or Norway, but it's Finnmark, Norway. And there's this community there, and like the men go out on this fishing trip, but there's a storm and all of the men die, like all in one day. So it's just women left. I feel like it was an island maybe, or it's a very like secluded place. And so now the women are just running their own community, but there's like a church that kind of like oversees them. Like the government is more so the church, and so they step in and think that there was maybe like witchcraft or something going on. And I guess this is based on a real thing that happened. So it's just like very different, very cool. I finished the Beartown series. I finished Winners by Frederick Backman. That one's also, you know, these Nordic countries. That one's in Sweden. I really like that series a lot. The Shanghai Girl series. Well, it's 2 books. It's just, you know, the 2, Shanghai Girls and then Dreams of Joy. Those were both very good. Obviously it starts in Shanghai and it's like set during World War II, and then the girls move to LA, and then in the second book they're older, there's a daughter who's an adult, and they go back to China under Mao's regime. So you get like this really long and interesting look at like what a lifetime as someone born in China who came to the US and then maybe even went back to China would have experienced in that one lifetime. It's pretty wild. What else was good? I didn't like Black Buck. Well, let me close that door. Hold on. Me and my husband are like rarely home at the same time. We're like both trying to get work done before we have to go pick up the babies. Okay, yeah, I didn't like Black Buck. I had like been saving that one to read. It was talked about so much like on Instagram a little while ago. Didn't like that one. I read a bunch of World War II historical fiction because we did a unit on that with my 8th graders, and I have a whole separate video on that, and I talked about a lot of them. So many were good, like The Word That Saved My Life, Under the Broken Sky. I did read The Women. I don't know if that was one of my favorites of the year. I just like the conversation that it started. Like, it's such a popular book and so many people read it. I just like the reminder to the readers of historical fiction, or like kind of popular historical fiction collectively, like this reminder that the Vietnam War was very bad and the government lied a lot and we did not win, and war is bad for everyone, and it ruined lots and lots of lives, even people who survived. And actually I didn't know about the nurses. Like I just hadn't heard those stories before, so that was really cool to hear. So I'm just glad that that like reminder is out there again. Oh my gosh, How to Hide an Empire. Okay, 2 nonfiction favorites of the year. Blitzed, which is about the drug use in the Third Reich, like how all the Nazis were on meth. Did not know that history. Everything makes much more sense now. That book is fascinating. Even if you're not really a reader, or like not a nonfiction or history reader, that book is so good. Like I, you know, recommending it to like my husband, to my dad, like people who don't necessarily read history but are like interested in like knowing things. That one is fascinating and it goes by very quickly. It's like quickly paced. That kind of makes sense, I guess. And then How to Hide an Empire, one of my just like favorite books of all time now. It hadn't been published yet when I wrote my master's thesis, but it aligns perfectly with my master's thesis. Like I would love to meet this guy. Like we need we need to chat. It's just about the different territories of the United States all around the world, and just like the fascinating history of like the Philippines and Guam and Puerto Rico. There's a little bit on the Virgin Islands. I was like, I got it hoping that it'd be like a lot about the Virgin Islands. There was only a little bit, but it was still so fascinating. Like my mind is blown. And I like read it once through, and then I'm like speed reading it again with my highlighters and going through and just like, because I know I'm gonna go back to this book over and over again. It's so amazing. Okay. Oh, Their Eyes Were Watching God. That was a reread, of course. Like I read it in high school. Everything went over my head. I think the only thing I remember is I just like have an image of Janie in overalls in my mind. Like when I read that part, I was like, oh yes, I just remember that she had like big boobs and long hair and overalls. That was kind of the only thing that stuck with me. But listening to it on an audiobook, I think is the perfect way to read that one. Like if I were to teach that book, which, wow, I feel like that's just that'd be a hard thing to do. It's just a bit of like an overwhelming text to me because it's so beautiful and so amazing, but you just like want to handle it with care too. Reading it is a little bit hard because it's just like all dialectical, you know, and like it was a little bit hard for me to get into it. But then once I started listening to it on an audiobook, I was just like, I savored it. I didn't even want to finish too quickly. I didn't speed up the audio. I just wanted to listen. The reader is amazing, and it's just so dang good. That was a favorite for sure. New People by Danzy Senna is very good. Okay, so like the premise kind of New People, if you've ever read anything by Danzy Senna, like Caucasia, so she is someone who is half black and half white, but is very light-skinned, so like my kids. So I'm very fascinated by her writing because she really explores that identity. And like in Caucasia, there's like twins, and one of them is more light-skinned and one of them is more dark-skinned, but they're both black and white. And so it's just really interesting to see what she does. A lot of it is very subtle. So then in New People, it's set in like the 90s, I think. And there are this group of friends that are new people, I guess. Like the main character is, well, she was adopted by a black woman, but she, like on her adoption papers, it says that she's black, but she's very light-skinned. Like people are kind of like not sure what she is when they meet her at first. And she doesn't really know her like full heritage, but on her paperwork, you know, because it's the United States, like if like the one drop rule, like she was considered black. And then she is in a relationship with this guy who, I think him and his, like he's like more light skinned than his sister. They're black. They're pretty rich though. They all live in New York. They like go to Stanford, I think, and then they like come back to New York. And so it's supposed to be kind of like this new generation of people who are like biracial, maybe like multiracial, or you know, just like kind of that Cosby thing with like Black families who have money and who are kind of nerdy and don't necessarily like fit the Black stereotypes anymore. So then like what type of identity do you have? The only thing that I had that I just like thought was weird about the premise is that like there have always been biracial people. Like there were always children of enslaved women who had been raped by these enslavers. And so there are people all over the United States and South America and everywhere for centuries, you know, who were biracial, and some people would like pass, and some people, you know, did all these kind of other interesting things to sort of like play. Well, I feel like play is the wrong word. I was gonna say play with race, but just to like use this very wobbly concept of race to their advantage when they needed to, or like switch it up when they were in other situations. So like I think that's very interesting. So like Caucasia does that a bit. Oh, I have another book about that. Oh, actually this one, oh, both of these. Okay, both of these books cover this concept. So The Strange Career of William Ellis, the Texas slave who became a Mexican millionaire. Yeah, and then this one too, The Great Arizona Orphan Abduction. So both of these just show the ways that people, like, that race is just different in different contexts. So anyway, I just think in New People it would have been interesting to like acknowledge that as well and just like bring that in, because the main character is getting her PhD in history or anthropology, I think anthropology, and she's studying like the Jamestown massacre, and most of those victims were Black, and she's studying like the resistance of those people. So anyway, there's just like so much happening in that book, and it's really interesting, and I just feel like she should have brought that in at some point as well. I don't know. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers is a really great audiobook. It's super funny. I can't imagine it being as funny on print or like on paper, because the reader is just so funny the way that she does Vera. So that's like the perfect audiobook. If you need an audiobook for like a summer trip, you're traveling, you're driving, whatever, I think that one is perfect. It's funny. It's a murder mystery, but it's like very like cute. I loved it. I thought that one was so fun. The Many Daughters of A Fong Moy was really good. I had started it like so long ago and then finally picked it up again. And there are quite a few different plot lines, because it's all these different descendants of A Fong Moy, who really was the first Chinese woman in America. So part of it is kind of historical fiction, and then the rest of it is just kind of like, you know, an imagining of like what all these descendants, like what their lives might have been like, and like the shared trauma that they all might have endured. So it's very interesting. He writes this little introduction, you know, about like epigenetics, and I feel like that part was not well written, and it like makes it seem like he does not understand epigenetics, but then the book itself is good. So I don't know, don't let the intro throw you off. And then the most recent one I finished was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It took me quite a while to finish it because it's like 500 pages. And I feel like this is one that a lot of people read when they were growing up, and I just never did. I was such a reader growing up, but I would just find these series and then just read those series and like never expand my reading or my mind. And I'm annoyed at myself about that. And so that's why now I like encourage my students to read more widely, and why I go back and try to read things that I missed when I was younger. I would just read like the whole Left Behind series, and then the whole like Sierra Jensen and like Christy Miller series. Like all of these series are books that you could buy at your local Christian bookstore, and they're not necessarily good writing. Left Behind series is very bad and damaging and harmful theology, and also just pure fiction. But that's the kind of stuff I read, and I thought that I was like such a reader because I would read like thousands and thousands of pages every year. But I rarely like broke out of that box, and I didn't even read things like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So I'm kind of trying to like redeem the reading of my youth, you know, rereading Their Eyes Were Watching God so that I actually understand it, and then A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It's so interesting because it was written in like the 40s, but it's set in like the 19 teens, kind of leading up to World War I. And of course it's set in like Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and the main character is this girl named Francie, if you haven't read it before. And it jumps around in time a little bit. You're kind of like following her life as a young girl up through being like a teen, but then you also get like the stories of her mom growing up and even her grandmother growing up a little bit, and like the family dynamics of her mom and her sisters and her dad and his brothers. And they feel so modern. They feel like such modern characters. Like the dad, Johnny, I think, just feels like I was also watching like Vanderpump Rules at the same time, and he feels like Tom Schwartz or something. He feels like a guy on like Vanderpump Rules. He's a drunk. He is irresponsible. He like tries to take them on this boat one time. He can't hold down a job. He's like handsome and can sing, but he's like a loser. And then the mom, Katie, you know, loves him, but she's just got to like do what she's got to do to feed her family. I think they live in like an apartment where she cleans other people's apartments so they get like free rent, and then they're always trying to just like make ends meet. And like it's from the perspective of Francie, but she's one of those characters who like listens to adults, you know, like she's very precocious, and so then you get to hear like what all the adults are saying. And the adults talk about like patriotism and like being an American, and like that's very interesting. That, you know, she's writing this in the 40s, but it's kind of based on her life. And so like her memories of maybe what people were saying even in like the 19 teens and how like jaded they were about like what it means to be an American. And a lot of these people were just like first or second generation Europeans who were in New York. There are some weird sections where she describes like Jewish people. I guess it kind of gives you a sense of what things were really like. And then she like describes a Chinese man at one point in a pretty uncomfortable way. So there are a couple things in there where you're like, this is old. But overall, it's just like so good, so well done. And I can see why people have loved it for so long. And it is kind of like, it reminded me of The House on Mango Street, which was another one that I read this year that I had never read before. And it's kind of like that, where it's a little bit like vignettes. Like there's not necessarily, if you were doing like a plot chart, like one conflict that has to be solved. Like it's just their whole life, they don't have enough money. They don't have enough money, and their mom wants to get them educated. Like she really believes that that is the thing that will change the outcome for her kids, because she's seen people like get a little bit of money, lose a little bit of money, marry somebody with some money, maybe they leave them or they die or whatever. And so she's like, okay, the mom like figures out like the thing that makes the difference is if you have an education. But then like she has another baby and needs her kids to work. And so, you know, I think probably so many people were in that situation during that time. Like, do we send you to like high school or just send you to a factory to work because we need to bring in some money? And so there's like always tension for her and her brother between working and going to school. And it was cool because we read with my 7th grade English classes books set during that time, and mostly in New York, that kind of center around like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory and working in factories and people coming from Europe and other places at that time. And so this fits right in there with that unit. So I started reading it with them as they were reading, but it took me longer to finish. But all of the like strategies that I gave them to read their historical fiction books totally work with this one. And it's not really historical fiction. Like it kind of is, just by default, I guess, because you do learn through it about like New York during the 19 teens at this time. But it's just, you know, it's just more like literature. And we know now, you know, that Betty Smith is writing a lot about, you know, her own life and experiences. So it's kind of like historical fiction, but it's not really somebody like later on, like doing research and writing about this time. So yeah, I don't know. That one was really cool. It's so long. It's like 500 pages. So I don't know if any kids would want to choose that one for that unit next time we do it, but maybe I'll just like offer it as an option because it's fun to talk about. Let's see. Okay, so just to tell you what I'm reading now, I found my Kindle that I have not used in 10 years. Wild, I know, like, I need a Kindle. I need to be using a Kindle and not buying all these books. But so the first book that I'm reading on that is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray, because I know it's like 700 pages and I didn't want to have a physical copy of it, so I just got that on my Kindle. I'm also reading Master, Slave, Husband, Wife. I really hate that title. It just annoys me. The book itself is very good. I need to get back to it. I'm like 14% of the way through. It's so good. I'm gonna have a lot to say about it when I'm done with it, I think, because I like the way it's written. I just really hate that title. It's just like annoying. I've been reading The Bright Ages, A New History of Medieval Europe, like forever. And now that I'm teaching 7th grade history next year, I need to finish reading that one. The Prospectors, I'm also reading that. Set in like Alaska, like the Alaska Gold Rush. The Old Drift is very good. I'm listening to that one. It's set in Zambia. Brother's Keeper, I'm like 6% of the way in, set in Korea. Wolf Hall, I've been listening to forever. Wolf Hall is so long. I think I have a physical copy of it over here somewhere. Oh, I see it. Okay, it's very, very thick. I've been listening to that for too long. I need to wrap that one up. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I'm also reading that. It's very short. I don't know why I haven't finished that. Death by Dumpling, I'm also reading. And If I Survive You. So those are all the ones. And there's probably others. Okay, it's 3:30. I took Jensen to his friend's house. This was like one of the first times maybe the first time that I've like taken him to a friend's house from school, like where I don't know the parents really, and let him stay there. I'm gonna go pick him up in like an hour though. Oh, and I need to do more cleaning and organizing. This room is a disaster, and I need some more coffee, and I need to make an Instagram reel and get all of my classes set up for summer school tomorrow. Okay, I'm starting to lose it. Let me let you go. Thank you for talking books with me today. Don't forget to check out the master's program or graduate like extension courses from Gilder Lehrman. Those look very cool. Hope you're having a great summer, and I will see you soon. Bye.